Edu de Freitas is a teacher and Cambridge certified teacher trainer based in São Paulo. He's been working in ELT since 2010 and he holds the TKT, CELTA, IFELT, que fala? IFELT? Yeah.
Sim.
And CPE. He's also the coordinator of the teacher development SIG at Bristol and social media coordinator at Braille. Então, esse pessoal do Braille, que eu acho que todo mundo conhece essa comunidade no Facebook, arrebenta. O Taylor vai estar com a gente no dia 30, viu? Ninguém vai faltar esse Enproli até o fim. Obrigado, querido, e desculpe o atraso.
It's all right. It's all right. So I saw that. Can you guys hear me well? Is it okay? Can you hear my microphone? Yeah. Cool. So when I talked to Maggie, I asked her whether the talk should be in Portuguese or in English, and she told me I could choose from. So I saw that most of the speakers I saw today, they were actually presenting in Portuguese, but I prepared my talk in English. And to tell you the truth, my Portuguese is horrible. So I sound much smarter in English. So forgive me for using English for this talk. So if it's okay with you, we could start. So I would like to first apologize to Maggie and Felipe and all the organizing committee of the event, because I gave them a title of a talk that I was going to present, that even though the topic is still the same, I changed the title because I saw, I'm going to read the initial title that I came up with. It says, Stand Strong Teacher, What I Learned from My Failures When Teaching Kids and Teens During the Pandemic. So what happened was I see excessive positiveness, if we could say something like this. I think it is very important for us to understand the moment we're in. So I completely changed the style of my talk today. So it's very difficult for me to present online. So please interact with me. I have the chat open here. So feel free to send messages and comments and laugh, and let's all have a very good time together. So the title of my talk is Kids and Teens Through the Screen, Diaries of a Teacher in Panic. So there is a very important disclaimer here. The slides do not reflect my mental states. They're just here to look pretty. So hopefully you're gonna see how this goes today. So in today's session, we're going to cover a few things, and these are the topics we're going to go through. They are all true stories. Everything I'm about to tell you happened to me. So the first one, we're going to go through naked parents walking in the background. Then we're going to go to Clara, no, please put your dog down. Then after that, we're gonna go for homework, once upon a time. Then, why are your cameras off? Then we're gonna go to, hey, anybody there? And then finally, we're gonna go for homework. The saga continues. So I see lots of compliments on my slides. I'm gonna give you the secret of my success later on today for the slides. So stay until the end, and I promise I'm gonna give you the news. So that's what I planned for today's session. And the first topic is, but before we actually continue, feel free to share pictures of my slides, but only if you tag me. If you share pictures of my slides and don't tag me, I'm gonna be really mad. Yeah? So that's my Instagram account. Feel free to do that, and just share with people if you relate to what we're discussing here. So our first topic is naked parents walking in the background. So why does it happen? I mean, why does it happen? Why do we keep facing very embarrassing situations during online live lessons? What happened was that this is all based on my experience and on help from a great friend of mine, Claire Venables. I think you know her. She's a specialist in teaching young learners, and during my talks to her, and she asked me to she asked me actually, like, why is this happening? Like, why are parents walking half naked in the background? Why are parents yelling at students? Why are students studying in the kitchen while the mother is cooking lunch? So there is a lot of there's a lot that goes on there. And the conclusion that we got together was that it was not clear to students and to parents that the class had started. So what happened? Well, what I thought would be a great solution for this is to signal very clearly to my young learners, especially because my students are like second graders, so they're 6, 7 years old. So they're almost everybody turning 7 now. So the first thing we have, the very first slide of my lesson is something that looks very similar to this. So it goes like, say thank you and goodbye to your family. So I literally have them say, thank you family, thank you mom, thank you dad, thank you aunt, thank you grandpa. So they can tell the family, like, listen, the lesson is about to start. So then I give them some time to say hello to their friends. So I said, okay, so let's now say hello to your friends. And then they say hello to whoever is in the room. And then I ask them to mute their microphones. So that's a great, that's the great beginning of the lesson, to signal not only to students, but to everybody who's around. So that they go like, okay, so now it's time for English lessons. After this, since they are second graders, I usually have a hello song. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this song. This goes, hello, 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 how are you? So that's really how it goes, the whole song. And this is one of the practices that I have on my face-to-face lesson. I always sing the hello song with my students at the beginning of the lesson. And I decided to bring this to the online lesson too. Yeah? I heard that someone saying that I came up with said Edu começou a fez a routine for live lessons, for online lessons. There is some collaboration here, but everything I'm telling you, like most things I'm telling you, come from Claire Venable's playbook. So she gives all these tips there. And I was probably one of the first people who actually read this, and who to put things into practice and give her some feedback. I'm gonna put my Instagram here because I see some people are asking, and also Claire Venables, who is this friend of mine, who's a specialist in teaching young learners. So can you hear me? Because people are saying that it's stuck. Is it okay? Okay, cool. So, and then after we kind of start the lesson by talking to parents and saying thank you dad, thank you mom, and then we have the hello song. This helped me a lot with two very problematic things. The first one was background noise and background naked parents walking. So by doing this, like my problems really reduced. Then the second problem that I would like to bring up is, Clara, no, please put your dog down. So why do you think this happens? Why do you think students do this, like in the middle of the class, out of the blue? Why does it happen? So I'm going to give you a few seconds so you can interact in the chat with me. They want to get attention. Yes. The kids, especially this age, they need attention, right? So Laura says because they are bored. this is one of the things we're going to talk today. This is one of the things we're going to talk about today. Um, but mostly because sometimes they not I wouldn't say that they are bored. I would say that it's not clear for them what they have to be doing in that moment. So whenever we have a task for our learners to perform during the online lessons, they really have to be very clear in the slides you're following. So if you look at this, for example, this goes at the beginning of the lesson, and that's a strong recommendation I bring to you today. As your third, fourth slide after the hello slide song, that if in case you're using this, I always put there all the materials we're going to need for that lesson. So in case they don't have, they don't have a pencil or an eraser or one of the books or the activity book or something like this, they could have enough time to go and grab it. So it's very important for us to put the materials we're going to be using for that lesson. Not only this, but in every slide, in every activity that you suggest, it's important for you to put the materials on the side so students know what kind of material they are supposed to have at that moment, the pages of the book, and everything that they need to know there, right? And it also helps you as a teacher to keep track of where your lesson is heading to, right? So these are two important tips. And then, why is Clara showing her dog to me on camera? First, because she's probably, she doesn't know what to do. That's one of the things. Second one, it's not clear to her that now it's time to perform a certain activity. So whenever you show them what they have to do and what's the material they need for that task, the dog becomes unnecessary at that moment. So I don't know if you guys agree with me, but that's, as I said, that's like my diary as a teacher in panic. So I hope this helps you somehow in your lessons next week. Also, we have to take into consideration interaction. Interaction, especially in the young learner lesson, is really important because we have games and we have all this kind of activities. And when we have online lessons, it's difficult to have kinesthetic activities like Meg mentioned on her talk. But it's still possible to do. Or since we are using computers, we could also bring their reality, which is like games, could also be used as language learning. I don't know if you're familiar with this website. It's called Wordball, and it's got like, I don't know, more than 20 different templates for games that you can prepare. The only thing is that you can prepare, I think, 5 games for free. So if you want to have like the full experience of the website, you have to pay like 18 reais a month, which I totally decide it was worth it. So I paid for Wordball, and I plan the games for my students, and I have them play the games during the lesson. So this lesson that I'm showing you with the slides here was a lesson I planned on family members, and I played we played a memory game together. So what happened was I shared the link with them so they could play in class, and then I sent the link to this game to their parents so they could play outside class as well. So it is something that we can do, and preparation does not take a lot of time, but the impact of this kind of activities is really big. My students from this group that I'm using as an example, they are 6 to 7 years old, and sometimes we take for granted that they don't know how to click on the link or how to access a website. But the truth is, they do know how to do this. Yeah. So just don't take for granted what you would be able to do when you were 6 years old. When I was 6 years old, I probably couldn't open a website on my own. But times are different, right? So don't take for granted. Don't take for granted at all. Um, Also, it is also really important, still in a young learner lesson, to give them time to personalize the content and bring it to their reality. So, for anyone who knows me, you guys know that I'm a Disney fanboy. So I love everything about Disney. And this lesson I prepared using Disney family members. So I taught them how to say brother, mother, sister, grandma, grandpa. And at the end of the lesson, I give them the chance to talk about their family, right? Because that's really what's going to make learning um, tangible and visible for them and meaningful. That's the word I was looking for, meaningful. Because if we completely ignore the fact that they're learning vocabulary and we don't bring this to their reality, so it's not really relatable, is it? So it's because whenever we learn something new, we have to bring this to our reality. We have to be able to share our experience using this new language we're bringing. It could be either sharing our opinions, and in the case of young learners, things are not different, right? And they are going to love to tell you about their family. It's believe me, my students, they were like bringing pictures, and they were like in the bedrooms, and they ran to the living room and they got pictures, and I was like, ah, teacher, look, this is my grandma, this is my granny, this is my granddad. So they were really excited, really excited. So our next step, still in the young learner lesson, we're going to talk about homework. I don't know your experience, but I teach at a language center, and homework has always been something difficult for me. Especially, I've had experience teaching in regular mainstream schools, and homework was still a problem. But when you teach at mainstream schools, the procedures are different, right? Because students, they really have to do the homework. If they don't do the homework, I mean, they can be punished or something like this. But in language centers, things are not like that, right? So you have to tell them that they have to do the homework because they have to, and hope they do it. Yeah. And sometimes with all the schedule that remote teaching is presenting to parents, the homework from English school kind of stands aside because the priority is the school, right? So one of my solutions for this situation was to improve my communication with parents. And what I found, an alternative I found was to actually create a virtual diary. So I used a free platform called Google Sites. I don't know if you're familiar with Google Sites. It's very user friendly. You don't have to be like any computer pro or anything to be able to create this virtual diary to communicate with parents. And there, every day we have lessons. I put the date and the homework that we have for that day. Yeah. The thing is, can you see here on the screen? There is the button that says Folha 1. So you can have links to downloadables. You can have links to songs, to videos, to games. So one of my lessons, we talked about cooking. It was food vocabulary, and I posted a cookie recipe, so parents, as a suggestion for parents to do with them at home. And then the following class were like, "Hi, teacher, me and my face cookies." And then they were like showing the cookies and all. It's Google Sites. That's the name of the platform, Google Sites. Yeah? And I also use this platform for general communication, not only for homework, not only for downloadables and audios and links in general. I always use it to talk about calendar, tests, assessment, important dates, and like anything, enrollments and all, any institutional communication, I also post there. And it has helped me. At the beginning, I had to be very repetitive with parents. So for the first 3 weeks, I would always, besides posting, apart from posting the pieces of homework on the Google Sites, I would also email them, say, listen, please check our Google Sites. Our homework is there every lesson for 3 weeks, and so they could create the habit, right? Because we also have to think about how parents' lives are at the moment. It's not only about our lives being way more difficult than normal, but we need to have empathy with parents as well, because it's a lot. There is a lot going on for them too, right? So I think empathy is the secret for a successful relation with parents and successful young learner lessons. Yeah. So far so good. Am I going too fast? Are you guys able to keep up? Any questions so far for young learners? Because we're about to move to teens now. Yes. All right. So teenagers. Teenagers. This is a class. If you teach teenagers, that's a sentence you've probably repeated 1,001 times. Why are your cameras off? So please just type in the chat box if this happened to you. If you've said the sentence at least 5 times this week. Okay, a lot. Yes, always, every day, all the time. Yes. So with the young learners, this is my experience with the young learners. They tend to have zero resistance to have their cameras on. Then what happens when we teach teenagers? It is really not big news that teenagers have issues with their appearance. It's been said, it's been observed, it's been confirmed. Teenagers have issues with their appearance because they're either too thin or too fat or too short or too tall or too white or too black or too this or too that. So, and it's an age they are still forming their character and who they are, and appearing on camera is something that that is very, it could be very, it could affect them quite a lot. So, and why am I bringing you this? Because, well, I'm not an introvert at all, as you can see. I'm super communicative. I don't have problems with cameras at all. And I teach this group on Saturday mornings. They are mixed. They are C1 group. They are advanced students. And one of my students, she's a teenager, and she didn't turn the camera on in the first lesson we've had back in March. So at the end of the lesson, I told her, I said, listen, guys, at the end of the lesson, I was like, okay, guys, so thank you for the lesson today. I really need you to have your cameras on for next class because we're going to have an activity and for security reasons. And so I came up with this excuse so they would turn their cameras on. And guess what happened? This student didn't show up. And I said, well, okay. And then on Monday, this was on Saturday, and then on Monday, her mother sent me an email telling me that she wanted to talk to me, so if I could call her. So I did call her. And she was like, Eduardo, let's name this student as Bianca. Her name is not Bianca, but to keep her identity anonymous, let's call her Bianca. And then her mother goes like and says, Eduardo, I don't know what happened with Bianca on Saturday. She woke up at 6:30 in the morning. She took a shower. She combed her hair. She did her makeup. She was in front of the computer when the time the lesson started. And then what happened? I entered in her room. She was crying in front of the computer because she couldn't. She wasn't strong enough to turn the camera on because she was not comfortable with the way she was looking. And she didn't go to class because of this. And again, as I said, the same way we need to have empathy towards parents, we also need to have empathy towards our students. And sometimes what seems to be like they're not willing to turn on the camera. It's not about wanting. Things go deeper, right? So from that moment on, that's a battle I decided not to pick with my students, because this can be very, very aggressive for them. And at the end of the day, it's unnecessary exposure, right? So the agreement I have with my students is the following. Listen, if you don't want to turn your camera on, it's okay, but I need you to participate. Because that's what happens, right? I see someone posted here in the chat that you feel like you're in a monologue. You're always talking on your own. But that's one of the things we have to be careful with. So agreements, agreements work really well with kids, but with teenagers as well, right? I think as the clearer the communication is, the better. You can tell them, listen, guys, you're here to learn English. I'm here to teach you. I completely understand and I respect the fact that you don't want to have your cameras on, but I need you to participate. End of story. So ideally, that's a combinado you can have with your teenagers, right? And there is this very famous sentence, que o combinado não sai caro. So why forcing students to turn their cameras on when this is going to impact directly on their performance? Because if you're familiar with any of with Krashen's hypothesis for language acquisition, one of them is the affective filter. So if students, they have a high affective filter, language learning and acquisition does not happen. So if they're not comfortable and feeling safe where they are, language learning does not happen. By asking students to turn on their cameras, you're not making the environment safe for them to learn. But we always have those students who don't turn their cameras on and they're on WhatsApp, they're on Instagram, and well, we run this risk, but there are many strategies that we can have and types of activities that we can bring that we ensure that students are participating in the lesson without really compromising this safe environment that we all fight for. Some of my tips are the following. And then let's suppose that I got to, because remember I told you that all these topics that we covered are part of my experience. So from that day that I talked to Bianca onwards, I decided not to have my students with their cameras on. Just like, if you want to have your cameras on, that's okay. If you don't want to have your cameras on, that's okay as well. Feel free to do what suits you best. And then what was the problem after that? Silence. Silence. And I was like, hi, anybody there? Please tell me in the chat if you say this sentence during your lessons. Yes, every day. Yes, yes, yep, always, many times. So then this powerful question that I was asking consistently had me reflect about the kind of lesson I was planning. So then there was the question like, were my lessons interesting enough for my students? why weren't they contributing? And those were students that they used to contribute a lot during the face-to-face lesson. So something happened within the transition from face-to-face to online lessons that caused this lack of participation, lack of contribution. And then I decided to apply some different strategies and different types of exercises during my lesson that would somehow force them to communicate in order to complete a task collaboratively. And then that goes along with what Maggie said about projects. This lesson was for a B2 group. We were going to talk about the Time 100 list. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Time 100 list. It's a list that is published every year by the Time magazine, and they choose the 100 most influential people. So when I started my lesson, I didn't tell them we were going to talk about the Time 100 magazine. I didn't. I just put the 4 pictures there, and I had this 4 questions. Who are these people? What to know about them? And probably the most important question out of these 3, which brings some sort of problem-solving characteristic to this activity, which is, what do they have in common? What does Lady Gaga, Michelle Obama, Jane Goodall, and Pope Francis have in common? So they would have to collaborate together in groups and share their knowledge about these 4 people and how these 4, and why were these, what do they have in common, right? Like, how can Lady Gaga and Pope Francis be connected? Or Jane Goodall, which is a person who works with apes and monkeys and chimpanzees, is connected with Michelle Obama, which is the former First Lady of the United States. So there is this problem-solving characteristic for this activity, that students had to work together and combine what they knew in order to perform the task. So it was not an individual task anymore. It was a collaborative problem-solving activity. And if students did not communicate, they would not complete the task, which was what we agreed on initially, right? This is one of the strategies. So include problem-solving activities in your lesson, but problem-solving that students need to collaborate. So that's the secret. So using this kind of activities are really going to maximize communication opportunities for your students. Then there is also another technique, which is called Jigsaw Reading. Are you familiar with Jigsaw Reading? I'm going to type here in the chat box so you know. Jigsaw Reading. Who's familiar with Jigsaw Reading? Let's see. No. Okay, good. I like to see no's because you're learning, right? Jigsaw reading is a strategy that we use. It's a type of reading activity, and this could go for listening as well, in which students are going to read different parts of the same text, and in order to make sense of the whole context, they are going to have to talk to each other. So what do I do in this case? I had a paragraph from Lady Gaga, from Michelle Obama, from Pope Francis, from Jane Goodall, saying what they had in common. So why were they on the list of Time 100? So some students read number 1, some students read number 2, some students read number 3, some students read number 4. After they read the text, I grouped them in a way that we had a student who read 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the same group. So they would share and collaboratively get a full picture of the text they read. You can do this not only with texts, you can also do that with listening. So perhaps you find short podcasts or short videos on YouTube, and you name numbers, and you label students with numbers, and you direct a different video to a different student, and they have to collaborate together and say, okay, tell me what you watched about, tell me what you read about. So everybody together has a different picture, right? It is, once again, it's called Jigsaw Reading. Jigsaw Reading. So in this case, our objective was to find out why these 4 people were on the list of times, right? So João read about Lady Gaga, Marina read about Michelle, Felipe read about Pope Francis, and Jackie read about Jane Goodall, right? So 4 students reading 4 different texts. So what do I do at the end? I group them. I put all of them together, and they share what they read. So again, it's a reading activity, but there is a communicative purpose at the end. So you are forcing students to share what they read. So jigsaw reading could be done with any level. If you're teaching primary learners, like 4th, 5th year, you could have, you're teaching, for example, parts of the house, and you have them read like description of different parts of the house. So each one reads a different description, and together they decide whose part of the house was that. So some sort of collaborative, again, collaborative tasks that are going to foster communication. Also, there is also another strategy, and that's more directed to speaking, which is called a pyramid discussion. Everything I'm telling you here happened in the same lesson. So they had this discussion, they read, and then we talked about the language that I wanted them to use, which is the language here on the side, which is generally called. So it has proved to be, some will say, gives a real insight into, through the mouth of, regardless of. So I wanted them to use this expression to express their arguments. And after they read and we worked on language, I started a pyramid discussion. So they had the task. So let's check the task. If you and your classmates were responsible for selecting the people for time 100, how would you do it? Come up with the top 10 most influential people for this year so far. So in pairs, they had to come up with the top 10. Just follow me. In pairs, they come up with the top 10, right? The next, and they have to just defend why they've chosen those 10 people. Like, oh, there is, I don't know, there is, I don't know, I can think of, there is, I don't know, anybody who's there, like anybody who did something important this year. The two scientists from Butantan, from OSP, who Trump, okay, a negative example, but Trump, negative in my opinion, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm very biased, but Trump is definitely on the list of the most influential people of 2020. Yeah, and they would have to defend why, justify why they put Trump on that list. In pairs. Our next step goes now in groups, so we would pairs together in groups of 4. Share your thoughts and come to an agreement regarding the criteria in the list of people. So we have a pair with 10 people and a criteria, and we have another pair with probably different 10 people and probably different criteria. So I put them together and I have them discuss and negotiate what the criteria for a new list that they are going to create together would be. So they work together. So they started in pairs and now they are in groups. After we have depend, and then this will depend a lot on the size of the groups that you teach. So if you teach like 10 students, this is still doable. If you teach groups of 5 or 6, you would stop here. Yeah. But since my group was big, I teach 13 students in this group. After we had the groups, different groups criteria and different lists, I had them discuss together. So they were all together discussing with and agreeing and negotiating for a criteria for the whole class and a top 10 of the whole class, not about pairs, not about groups, but now for the whole class. So I ask you, based on what we talked about today, do you think that in this lesson I had to ask, hi, anybody there? I didn't really, right? Because there were clear steps I was following, and they had tasks to perform in a limited amount of time. So, and there was something that was interesting to them because I gave them the voice to share who they thought would be good names for their list. What's their criteria? It's all about personalization. And then how do I do all this, right? Since we don't have any interaction, most people use the chat. If you use Zoom, if you use Google Meet and all, you can put things in the chat. But there is also a good way of interact. Padlet is interesting, but I use, guys, the good and old Google Docs. So I have the date of the lesson. So it's like it's our diary. So everything that happens in the lesson is there. I share links. I share Google. This is Google Docs, Google Documentos. So I put pages of books and reading activities. So I have them work collaboratively. This is something that I don't edit on my own. Everybody edits together. So this was a reading activity, and there were some questions that they had to answer. And while they were answering the questions, I asked them to collaboratively go to the text and highlight where they found that answer. So this gives the chance for students to interact all together. I have 2 minutes more, so I have to rush, sorry. The homework saga continues. So with teenagers, homework has always been a problem, be it face-to-face or live online lessons. So as a suggestion to solve this problem, and this solved my problem, I would get their the same Google Docs that we have here. I write the homework there of what they are supposed to do. And I also write what we did on this lesson, because in case someone missed, all they have to do is log into our Google Docs. It's collaboratively, everybody can edit, everybody can type, so they can check what we did. And in the next lesson, I actually have the spaces for them to write their answers from the homework. We have homework correction. So I actually nominate them one by one. And sometimes I let them choose. I have all the numbers played out. And I said, okay, guys, so open the Google Docs. So we're going to correct workbook. We're going to correct exercise 2 on page 21 from your workbooks. So go to the Google Docs and write your name on the numbers you would like to answer. So they go there, they write their names. And after they write their names, said, okay, so now go and write your answers there. And then as a group, everybody together, we tick, I correct with them. Normally, students, we don't need, it's not part of my routine in face-to-face lessons to correct homework from the workbook because they already have their answers in the back of the workbook. So homework is some sort of self-study moment. But in face-to-face lessons, we can actually see if they're doing the homework or not, right? But in live lessons, this does not happen. So I also set aside some minutes of my lesson, especially at the beginning of the lesson, while some students are still logging in to correct the homework. So I check if they're doing the homework. And surprisingly, they weren't at the beginning. And then after I adopted this practice, things have changed. Things really have changed. So none of this tips that I brought to you today were best practices from the first week. This is a work in progress. This is the failures I've had throughout my online teaching experience and the changes I've made to solve the problems I've had. So looking back in today's session, we talked about naked parents walking in the background and how to solve that. We talked about, Clara, no, please put your dog down, and also how to solve that. The homework, once upon a time with kids, how to solve that, communication with parents. Why are your cameras off? Then you can decide if you're going to pick this battle or not with your teenagers. Hi, anybody there? By solving this problem by promoting interactive and collaborative tasks, and solving the homework problem with teenagers. So that was our outline for today's session. So thank you very much for staying until late. I'm sorry, I'm 2 minutes late now, Meg. So forgive me for this 2 minutes. If you have any questions, please email me. Both lessons I used as examples for today, they are available on my blog. So you can actually go to my blog, which is edudefreitaselt.com, and download the lessons, the slides, the handouts, everything I post. I try and post lessons there every week. So I haven't posted this week because I had a crazy week, but I normally try and keep the blog active. And I also have my Instagram account, which is this in red, so at Edu de Freitas ELT. So you can follow me. I always share ideas, and whenever I have a new blog post, I share on my Instagram profile as well. So Meg, I would like to thank Brastiso Bahia for the invitation. I'd like to thank Enproli for inviting me as well. And I hope you guys have an amazing Congress. The tip about the slides. There is a website called slideshare.com. Slideshare.com. So go to this website. They have beautiful templates. This is a template from SlideShare. Slideshare.com. Yeah. So I'm gonna type my blog. My blog, my Instagram, and my email are here in the slide. So take a picture, stay in touch, send me a message if you like this. Please give your feedback. I think that we can all grow from feedback. Thank you, Meg, once again. Thank you, Felipe, for staying all the way.